Today, I'm going to be telling you guys about the top 5 best fruits in every sea and Blox fruit. So if you guys enjoyed this video, make sure to like, subscribe, right to the video, guys. For all of these, I'm going to be going in the order of what I think is the best for the sea to the least. So if you disagree with me or if you agree, let me know in the comments below. And we're going to be starting off with the first sea. Now, starting off with the first sea is obviously going to be the light fruit. I feel like everyone always recommends light fruit just because it is so good, especially for newer players. Now, the reason why it's so good is because the M1 actually scales with fruit, and you're going to notice a pattern for first sea specifically with all of these fruits that this is going to be a big thing about it. The fact that the M1 scales with the actual fruit stat, as you guys can see, fruit stat right here, Blox fruit, it makes it so good simply because you're able to use the actual Blox fruit abilities while also being able to M1 at the same time. Now, it's also worth mentioning that it is a Logia fruit, so you will not take damage from enemies that are at your level or lower, which can also make grinding easier, but most of the time while you're grinding, you'll be at a higher level than them. I mean, they'll be a higher level than you, so that's not really relevant, but it can actually be a help. It's also worth mentioning that the light abilities are really good for grinding, especially in the first sea. Honestly, every sea light's pretty good, but the main reason why it's so good in first sea is because of the flying ability. Flying in the first sea is so important because the islands are so far spread apart compared to literally any of the other seas. So flying will actually help you out a ton. Now, next up in the first sea is going to be the ice fruit. It's going to be very similar to the light fruit. The M1 scale with your fruit stat instead of scaling with your actual melee. Like, you guys can see how much I'm doing. Look, I got no sword stat right now, and it's because I'm tacking with the actual Logia fruit. Very good. And also, like I mentioned, Logia fruits do have the bonus. That's honestly the main reason why this is here. Just because the light abilities, while they're okay, they're mainly focused towards PvP. They can be useful for PvE content, but it's definitely a very PvP based fruit other than the M1s. But trust me when I say this, the M1s are going to be crazy helpful in the first sea. It's also worth mentioning that you do actually get the ice skate ability, which can be nice for traveling, especially over the sea and things like that. Can be faster than boats depending on if you have the game pass or not. Now, I'm not going to talk about this that much because you guys probably already know the Buddha fruit. Now, Buddha fruit's going to be in third simply because I don't think you should be leveling melee stat in the first sea. I'm not going to level my melee stat just because I barely ever use melee. But, you know, Buddha obviously is great. This is the awakened version, so I have even more M1 range. You're not going to be worrying about that when you're actually in the first sea. But Buddha obviously gives damage reduction and M1 extension. There's not really much to say other than that, just because that's really all Buddha does for you. Now, one of the main reasons why I'm reworking this tier list is simply because of this fruit releasing, the Kitsune fruit. So you get the M1 bonuses, right? The M1 bonuses are great. The reason why it's so low is because Kitsune is so rare that you're probably not going to get it in the first sea. So I had to rank it lower just because of that. But if you manage to get Kitsune, the abilities are great for PvP and PvE content, so you won't get smacked. You won't get slapped around by a bunch of nerds if you're using Kitsune, because you could just spam on them and there's not much they could do about it. But it's mainly because of the actual M1 right here. Also, you dash faster, which is actually very nice. Now, one you're probably not going to be expecting is the actual smoke fruit. This one, you guys may be surprised about this. It's mainly because it's a Logia. You also actually get the smoke flight ability, which is pretty nice. There's not much else to say other than that, but it's a really good common fruit just to get for the first sea specifically. I'm getting slapped around by an NPC. Now we're going to be moving into the second sea fruits now, starting off with Buddha. Now, Buddha is going to move up to number 1 just because in the second sea, you're going to be able to awaken it. And that'll instantly make Buddha very good for grinding. Buddha will pretty much be your go-to grinding fruit from the second sea and third sea onwards. But third sea, you're going to be a little surprised about the ranking, so make sure to stick around for that. But Buddha, I feel like, is one of the best, if not the best, grinding specific fruit in the game. The fact that you get damage reduction combined with the giant M1 range makes it just amazing overall. It's also worth mentioning that you can PvP with Buddha. If you want to be a little toxic, you can just go ghoul with Buddha, run around M1ing NPCs whenever you get low, because your M1 range is so huge you might even hit them at the same time. It's pretty toxic to go ghoul in Buddha, and a lot of people do it. So if you want to be toxic, there you go, man. Now, moving down to the second place from the first place slot is going to be light. It's still going to be an insanely good fruit for grinding. It's just not going to be as good as Buddha because now you got access to the Buddha awakening, which is actually really good compared to light, because you can instead go with, you know, melee scaling or Blox fruit scaling. You can do whatever you want at that point, basically. So light's going to be moving down, but I'm still going to rank it very highly because it obviously still is extremely good for grinding, and there's not really much to say other than that. it's just still really, really good for grinding. I mean, I grinded with light pretty much forever. Now, also moving up in the tier list is going to be the Kitsune fruit. Now, that you're in the second sea, you'll have a little bit more access to it, but it's still an extremely, extremely hard fruit to get. So no matter how good it possibly can be, I just can't recommend it to new players over the, you know, easier to get fruits, just because of how hard, and I mean when I say this, Kitsune is extremely, extremely hard to get. Like, I even find it somewhat hard to get, and like, you know, I have every fruit in the game, like 50 of them. So that says something about a fruit when that is the thing. But Kitsune obviously is still extremely good for grinding, just like what I said in the first sea. Really good M1s. The abilities are great for both PvP and PvE. Just a really, really good fruit. Now, making it onto the tier list and not being in the first sea is going to be Magma. I actually used Magma to grind through the second sea completely. I didn't use any M1s. I didn't use anything other than Magma. Only Magma. It's mainly because of the Z ability. Basically, you could just group a bunch of NPCs up together and then hold Z on them, and it'll pretty much one-shot the NPCs just because of the AoE tick afterwards. Like, you guys can see the guy's almost dead. And I don't even have very high mastery on Magma. It's also worth mentioning that you can awaken all my abilities. I don't think all of my abilities are awakened. So you can do even more damage than what I'm doing right now, but I only recommend awakening the first ability because it's really the only thing you need for PvE grinding with Magma. It's also really, really good for bosses. Now, last but not least in the second sea is going to be Dough. Dough is like the boss grinding fruit in the game, in my opinion. It just locks NPCs in place with your V, which allows all of your other people to pretty much just stomp them, anyone else you're doing it with. Now, the reason why this is so important in the second sea is because on top of Magma Island right here, there is the fastest level grinding method in the entire game. It is just simply the fastest. Now, that's extremely, extremely, extremely important because if you have enough fragments or you have friends to help you grind, in case you don't, you're fine. But if you do, it makes it so quick to grind. It is insane. And Dough is just really, really good for that. The only thing better for that is honestly Buddha. But people use Dough a lot against that boss. And the reason why is because it teleports around and stuff like that. But outside of boss grinding, it can also be really good for NPC grinding. You just have to group them up. You know, do the casual NPC grind method. Turn your brain off. It is what it is. It's also a really good PvP fruit. It's one of my go-tos. Call me noob or whatever if you want. That's fine. Now, last but not least, we're going to the third sea, and the first fruit is going to be Kitsune. Now, something you're going to notice in the third sea is you're going to be PvPing a lot more than usual because a lot of the people that just like to randomly attack you will be in the third sea. There is some in the second sea. They're a bunch of nerds, but they are very, 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 very prevalent in the third sea. So you will need fruits that can both PvE and PvP, and Kitsune is honestly pretty great for both. Also, by the third sea, you're going to have a lot more access to Kitsune. It's still extremely, extremely rare, but it's not so rare in the third sea to the point where I have to break it down because of that. And Kitsune hasn't also gotten nerfed at all, so it's still extremely good for bosses. I haven't even shown you guys the transformation yet, but you don't even need it. It obviously is extremely helpful to have it for grinding, but you don't even need it. The fruit is extremely fast, extremely good for PvP, very good for comboing, and it's just a great fruit to have overall. But as I said before, it is extremely, extremely, extremely rare. Now, next up is going to be Buddha. I'm not going to talk about it that much because you guys already know that Buddha, you know, it's good for PvE. You could also use it for PvP, like I said before, but it's just a really good PvE fruit. There's not much more to say about Buddha. It's just you punch people in the face or you slap people in the face with your big long sword, and that's pretty much the start and end of Buddha. Most mindless fruit in the game, but it is so good even though it is so simple. It's kind of crazy because Buddha has been consistently ranked high no matter what, and it's the most simple fruit in the game. You press Z, you slap people in the face, and that's kind of just the end of it for Buddha. Now, next up, coming into the third sea is going to be Leopard, which is another one you have not seen before. Now, the reason why I did include Leopard in second and first sea, the mastery is so annoying to get on Leopard because in order for Leopard to be actually good for PvE content, you kind of have to get the transformation, and it is so hard to get mastery in the first and second sea. So I had to only put it in the third sea because of that. But once you get it, it's a really good PvE and PvP fruit. You kind of just spam all the abilities and you kind of just tend to do a lot of damage because of that. And if you can get a good rotation going, it is extremely great. Not to mention the fact that the M1s obviously do scale based off of your fruit, which is another plus. But as you guys can see, I'm just spamming my abilities and not really thinking about it and killing all the NPCs in sight. Extremely, extremely good for grinding in the third sea. I would avoid it in first and second, though. Unless you've already been the third sea, obviously. Bro, look at my hand. What happened to my hand? Look at my hand, bro. Now, next up in the third C is going to be the dough fruit. I'm just honestly a big fan of dough fruit. A lot of people hate on it because it's a kind of a noob bait fruit, but I just really like it. I find it good for pretty much everything, especially PvP content, which, like I said, you'll be doing a lot of it in the third C. People will attest to that. You will get attacked in the third C, possibly even the second, just by people trying to grind out bounty. It's annoying, but it is what it is, man. It's also really good boss grinding fruit. You will also be doing a lot of that in the third C because there is a couple bosses that you'll be able to get a lot of mastery from for your actual items, and they will be bosses. So boss hunting fruits will be extremely good, and dough just happens to be really good for boss fighting. Now, last but not least in the third C is going to be the light fruit. It's just because I find light very good, and it's also really good for noobs. Just because the abilities are easy to use, they're easy to follow, they kind of just have big AoEs, or they're just really easy to use overall. Plus, the flight ability is great. Not to mention the fact that the M1s, you know, they obviously do scale off fruit damage, and you also have the Logia ability, which allows you to avoid damage entirely from enemies that are at your level or lower. I am taking damage here, but it's because they are close to my level. It is what it is, man. But yeah, I'm also going to be putting an honorable mention here. It's going to be Portal, just because of the ability to teleport around. If you get permanent Portal, no matter what C you're in, it's actually going to be pretty good. Like I said, just because of the ability to teleport around, it's good in every C if you're not actually going to be going for a fruit build, but the actual PvE of Portal is terrible. So if you don't want to be going for a melee build or a weapon build, avoid Portal. But if you're fine with going that, then Portal is great just for teleporting around. But yeah, let me know what your guys' favorite fruit is in the comments below. If you guys enjoyed the video, make sure to like, subscribe, and hope to see you next one, guys. Peace.